Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you, Mary. Thank you, Tim, everybody involved this evening, and also for the recording. It's great to be with you. This is a wonderful initiative, and anything that we can do at New Europeans to promote it, we should be doing more. And so here I am saying we will do more. Everybody should do more. So these are great conversations, and I'm really honoured to have the opportunity to contribute to it. And I understand that I have to put forward one idea and 5 reasons for why I think it's a good idea. I hope it will convince you that it's a good idea, but what I'm certainly looking forward to is discussing it and other things as well, and that I have approximately 10 minutes to do this, so I better get started. And my idea is the idea which you may have come across before. You may even have come across it in connection with campaigns from New Europeans, and it is for a green card for Europe. But the green card that we put forward initially was the idea of that was to ring fence the rights of EU citizens in the UK and Britons abroad post-Brexit. Whereas what I'm talking about this evening is a kind of green card 2.0, if I could put it that way. Because what I'm in favour of and what I'm putting forward this evening is the idea of a green card for all permanent residents of the European Union. And you might say, well, what use is that to us if Britain is no longer a member of the European Union? Well, what I would say is it takes a long time to get these good ideas into law in the European Union. And by that time, let's hope that Britain is again a member of the European Union, something I would very much support. So perhaps these two developments can go in parallel, and that would be a nice thing waiting for all of us British citizens, and I'm still a British citizen when Britain becomes a member of the European Union again. But of course, as you know, the way the EU citizenship works is basically you have to be a passport holder of a member state of the European Union, whereas what I'm advocating for is, yes, all passport holders of EU member states should have a green card, but so should all permanent residents of an EU member state. So that would include, of course, British citizens post-Brexit. Anybody who has permanent residency status in an EU member state should have an EU green card. And it would allow them to say, I'm an EU citizen, perhaps. Well, certainly it would allow them to say, the EU is my home. And it would give to permanent residents of the European Union, and not just EU passport holders, that package, that extra package of rights that we that we mean when we say EU citizenship. So I think you may remember what they are, things like the right to vote in local elections in another member state. If you live in another member state, I would like to see that extended to the right to vote in all national elections in another member state. So if you're a French person living in Germany, you should be able to vote in German elections. And it should give you equal treatment in those different member states. So it's about mobility, it's about democracy, it's about rights, and also one last thing that's helpful, it should be helpful to you when you're outside the European Union. And so, not all EU citizens are treated the same when they travel outside the EU. And that should be challenged. One thing that EU citizens currently have is the right to have consular representation from any EU member state if their own national member state consulate isn't present in a particular member state. So it's something that can help you inside the EU, and it's something that can help you outside the EU. A card, an EU green card for all permanent residents of the European Union. That's my proposal. So why do I think it's a good idea? Well, I think my top of my list would be it's going to make life simpler for everybody. And life is so complicated, isn't it? I mean, we've been hearing about some of these complications before this call. If you struggle with, we struggle with so many things, the artificial intelligence or the technology, so many things that in our lives that just make daily life more complicated. This would eliminate many of the small problems that we face as citizens living and working and moving around in the European Union. So it would make life simpler. After all, that was part of the reason for introducing the single market in the first place. One of the greatest advocates of that, of making life simpler for citizens at the time, was Margaret Thatcher. I know is what I would speak about Margaret Thatcher, but I'm afraid that at least she wanted that, and the green card would make life simpler for citizens, for consumers, for traders, for businesses, and so on. It would make life simpler. The second reason I would like it, and the reason I put this number 2, really it should be number 1, is that it would have stopped Brexit, but that would have been our green card 1.0, because I think if all EU citizens in the UK had the right to vote in the Brexit referendum, then Britain would not have voted to leave. And if you'd had my EU green card as a permanent resident of an EU member state, you would have certainly green card 2.0 had the right to vote in national elections, and therefore you would, as that was the franchise for the referendum, you would have had the right to vote in the referendum as well. I think it also would have protected the rights, made it easier to protect the rights of EU citizens in the UK post-Brexit. So that's my reason number 3. It's true that in the end, the rights of EU citizens in the UK were guaranteed unilaterally outside the scope of the withdrawal agreement, and that was something that was a good thing to have happened. But it's left so many EU citizens with so many problems still. I mean, a lot of people think this has all been resolved. It hasn't really. If I just say to you that 40% of EU citizens in the UK, 40% only have pre-settled status, which means that at some point their right to permanent residency, unless they remember to go and renew it, will disappear. I mean, this is a huge problem that the government's created for itself in the way that they've actually designed this scheme. And an EU green card would have given, if you like, a register against which people's rights could have been checked. I might want to go into this more in detail as to how that could have worked, but I think it would have made it much easier and much quicker to comprehensively secure the rights of all EU citizens in the UK post-Brexit, something that has not yet occurred, by the way, although a lot of people think that it has. And then I think my fourth reason is that I think it would have given us a different way to think about Europe. You know, so often we talk about Europe in terms of the economy, but really Europe is not just a community of interests, it's also a community of values. And the EU Green Card would have talked about our European identity as European citizens, and that's to do with values. It's not to do with territory and geography and where you were born. It's to do with it's a choice that you make, that you say, yes, I'm European. What do we mean by that? We mean, well, you know, what I mean by that is that I subscribe to some of the core values, and one of which is solidarity. Another one is the rule of law, freedom, democracy. And I think one of the tragedies of Brexit is that we didn't really talk about European citizenship, and we talked not at all about European values. And we should have done that. We should have spoken much more about the value of solidarity. If you go to certain areas of the UK where, you know, to former mining communities where the Brexit vote was strong, people might say, well, yeah, we're British, we're not European. What they mean by that is somehow the European project wasn't to do with the values that we care about. Of course, number one is the value of solidarity, but it is about solidarity. We never told people about that. And I think if we'd spoken more about citizenship and the values and the value of solidarity, that would have been helpful. We need to talk about Europe in a different way. And that brings me to my final point, and the title of what I was asked to talk about this evening, which is this idea of Europe of the citizens. So I've said, you know, Europe is not just a community of interests, it's a community of values. And Europe is not just a union of nations and states, which of course it is, a political project, a union of markets and money, which of course it is what I sometimes refer to as Europe 1, the Europe of nations and states, Europe 2, the Europe of market and money. It's also, and perhaps most importantly, a Europe of the citizens. And, you know, the institutions and all of us, we talk much more now about EU citizens. Curiously, we started talking about EU citizens once Brexit had gone through. We should have been doing it beforehand. But it is. And the future of Europe, if it's to have a future, is because it's a democratic project that its citizens believe in. And that's why I think an EU green card for Europe would be helpful, because it would make it an inclusive project for all permanent residents. And a final point, if you were to put a green card in the hand of a refugee or a British citizen or a migrant or somebody who's a permanent resident, give them that feeling that they belong to Europe, that they can be a EU citizen as well. Just watch how that would be repaid and how beneficial that would be to Europe as a whole. Be the right thing to do, but it would be a very productive and successful thing to do. And I hope that one day the EU institutions will find a way to do it. Thank you.